Tonight on College Pressbox, we're celebrating the sports equinox. Forget the holidays. This is truly the most wonderful time of year for all sports fans. We're talking baseball, basketball, football, F1, and of course, Longhorn sports. All this and more coming up on College Pressbox.
Good evening and welcome to College Pressbox. I'm your host, Debanny Cerda. He's Aram, Vela. We have a great show coming up to quite literally recap everything.
And just a quick little friendly reminder before we get started, folks, that we are sponsored by Cap Metro, Austin's very own regional public transportation provider, connecting you to work, school, play, and more. Find your ride at capmetro.org. And while we're on this topic of transit, this weekend Texas took a trip down to Houston to face off against the Cougars, taking a page out of Zach Wilson's book, you know what I'm saying, and Donovan Smith. Texas came off a bye week, and their last game was a last-second loss to the Oklahoma Sooners in the Red River rivalry. After a heartbreaking defeat like that, the Longhorns had something to prove this weekend. The game started exactly how we thought it would. Let's start off on this first drive right here. The Longhorns would start off with a strong 11-play, 75-yard drive to set up this touchdown throw from Quinn Ewers to Adonai Mitchell. That would be his lone touchdown catch of the afternoon. After getting a stop, Texas would get the ball back, and this would set up a 42-yard bomb from Quinn Ewers to Xavier Worthy. Talk about a deep threat. Worthy would finish with 6 receptions for 92 yards in that touchdown. After that, Texas and Houston ended up trading 3 and outs until Texas found themselves in the red zone yet again. Good run there by C.J. Baxter to set up, what do you know, a Wildcat formation. Savion Red at the Wildcat. At this point, everything is going according to script. Sark is getting cute with it, but don't hold your breath, though. This is where Sark decided to dedicate the rest of the game to the 2021 squad. I know y'all remember that. Donovan Smith proceeded to carve the Texas defense just like he did last year. He finished with 378 yards and 3 touchdowns. Right here, you'll see Houston finally gets on the board with a 32-yard touchdown to Matthew Golden. The score is 21-7 to Texas. But this right here is where Sark showcases his apparent lack of knowledge and lack of the concept of time, yet again, just like he did last week. Turnover on downs. What are you doing there, man? This was the moment that Houston seized to crawl back into the game. Donovan Smith to Joseph Manjack. I guess everything's bigger in Texas, even the names. 21-14. We're heading into the half. It was not going well. Houston gets the ball back to start. Third, and Donovan Smith connects with Matthew Golden yet again. Tie game. 21-21. Now here's the most important play of the game, in my opinion. Quinn Ewers improvising. Who do you think you are, bro? You're not Patrick Mahomes. He decides to truck a linebacker twice his size. That decision proved to be fatal for his shoulder. More on that later. But for now, enter Malik Murphy. Look at that. He got absolutely obliterated, man. This set up a Burt Auburn field goal. Yeah, look at the walk of shame. This set up the Burt Auburn field goal. Surprisingly, he made that. 24-21 Texas. But wait, Houston says, whatever you can do, I can do better. Tied up halfway through the fourth. And at this point, Texas is relying on the run game here to take the lead. C.J. Baxter had a huge night. Look at that. Texas would take the lead 31-24. And now the game is yet again in the hands of the defense. I know y'all had PTSD when I just said that. Will they choke again? It definitely looked like it until they got this stop. The spot was questionable here, but that's part of bad reffing. It's part of the game. Here we go. Game on the line. It passes incomplete. Texas survives and beats Houston 31-21. Now, it is worth noting that Quinn Ewers' decision to imitate Marshawn Lynch in that play will cost him a couple weeks with an AC joint sprain. And Malik Murphy will be the quarterback number 1 as Texas look ahead to BYU, Deb.
The game was not what we expected, needless to say. However, our very own Ikey Kohler and Tommy Arish were in attendance for the game. Let's take a look.
A win for Houston would make their season, as Dana Holgerson was told. The Cougars gave the Longhorns all they could handle. The Longhorns started off strong, hopping to an early 21-0 lead in what looked like would be a blowout, as Mitchell with the catch there.
Practiced and prepared. I thought we had a great week of practice. I thought we had a great week of preparation. And I thought we came out and played that way at the start of the football game to jump ahead 21-0. The lesson learned here is we got to have a killer instinct. And people aren't gonna lay down against us, and they're gonna continue to fight. And we relaxed. We didn't execute the way we had. We didn't execute, and
The Texas defense would step up in the second half as Michael Taft intercepts a ball in the end zone to prevent a go-ahead touchdown for Houston. It was one of 2 turnovers for the game for the defense. Quinn Ewers ended up exiting the game before the fourth quarter. Here's a hit that may have contributed to it. He ended up with a shoulder injury, causing Malik Murphy to enter the game.
I think it speaks a lot to this team's resiliency, this team's kind of mental toughness, their ability to finish in the fourth quarter. I thought showed up tonight. Okay, so I'm really happy about that. I'm happy to know when I wake up tomorrow morning we're going to be 6-1 and not 5-2. I think there's a resiliency of this group. I think there's a togetherness of this group. I think there's a fight on this team that is real. It's genuine.
It wasn't pretty the last 3 quarters, but Steve Sarkisian and his team, they're wired to go out and win a ball game, and they've learned how to finish games. So that's what won them this ball game. Next week, BYU's coming into town as the Longhorns hope to improve to 7-1. And that's all. I'm Ikey Kohler with TSTV Sports.
Joining us now is our football analyst, Tommy Arish. Thank you for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
All right, so Tommy, this was not an ugly win for Texas in Houston, but a win is a win. How were the Longhorns able to pull it off?
Well, the short answer is the power run game and Jahdae Barron. Texas's ground attack continues to be a somewhat pleasant surprise this season after the departure of Bijan Robinson and Roschon Johnson, as Jonathan Brooks and C.J. Baxter have continued carrying on that torch. Baxter ended up scoring the game-winning touchdown, but Brooks was also a yard away from his 5th 100-yard game in a row, so you have to tip your cap there. You also give some credit to Savion Red. He's been phenomenal in 4th and short situations. He picked up 2 on Saturday and came in for a touchdown on the goal line. Now on the defensive side with Jahdae Barron, this was a guy who was only supposed to play in case of emergency on Saturday. Steve Sarkisian ends up breaking the glass on him in the second half, and he ends up making a great play on 4th and 1 to end up winning the game for Texas. Great teams find a way to win ugly games, but this one really should never have been this close.
Nope, it should have never been that close. I definitely agree. But I think the biggest story for Texas coming out of the game was quarterback Quinn Ewers coming out of the game injured. What's the latest update you can tell us about that?
Well, Aram put it a lot more colorfully than I will, but Ewers took a lot of shots throughout the game and left in the second half after a big hit from a defensive lineman and left the game in a sling on his right arm, as you see there. We learned yesterday that Ewers suffered a grade 2 AC joint sprain, and the injury is not thought to be season-ending. Steve Sarkisian in his Monday press conference today said he was week to week. Now, at best with these injuries, the recovery period for an injury like this is around 2 to 4 weeks, which would allow Ewers to come back anywhere between the November 11th TCU road game and the Big 12 season finale against Texas Tech. So now, while we wait to hear on the severity of Ewers' injury and see how he progresses, Texas will likely turn to Malik Murphy, a guy who has waited his turn in Austin and now gets a chance to lead the Longhorns when they need it the most.
I definitely think Malik is going to step up, as we all expect to. Now, every week so far, it seems that we don't know what this Texas team is going to do, what initially our expectations are. So what do you have on Saturday when BYU comes into town?
Well, the good news for Texas is that they finally don't have to face a dual-threat quarterback. Keaton Slovis' season high in rushing this season is just 6 yards, which means the Longhorns won't have to keep a spy on him in the middle of the field, and they can play tighter coverage in that area. Offensively, look for Steve Sarkisian to try and keep things as easy as possible for his young quarterback. Lean on that run game until Quinn Ewers comes back. A lot of games really are going to have to rely on Jonathan Brooks and C.J. Baxter from here on out going forward if Texas wants a serious chance to make it to the Big 12 championship game and beyond.
I definitely agree with that one. So great analysis, Tommy. When we come back, our 2 very own Joe Duffey and Perla Paredes will join Aram at the desk to talk about the American League Championship Series to preview Game 7 between the Astros and Rangers.
Welcome back into College Pressbox. Now joining me are our baseball analysts. Let me introduce you to them. To my right, I got Joe Duffey. Joe, how are you doing tonight, man?
Doing good. Very nervous for this Game 7 matchup.
To my left, we got our very own Perla Paredes making her TSTV debut. How are you doing tonight?
Good. Also excited for
All right,
today's game.
let's get right into it. Now, Game 7 of the ALCS is quite literally moments away, or as I like to call it, the Texas Civil War. But for now, the Rangers responded yesterday after dropping 3 straight to the Astros. This winner-take-all Game 7 is going to be a rematch of Game 3 with Max Scherzer against Christian Javier, but this time at Minute Maid Park. So, Perla, I'm going to start with you. The Astros have gone to the ALCS 7 years in a row, and if they win tonight, it would be 2 World Series in a row. It has been more difficult getting there this year than years prior. So why do you think that is, and what do they need to focus on to win?
I believe Dusty Baker is a big reason why that happens. The 2023 season of the Astros highlighted Dusty's shortcomings as a coach. Last year, there were no significant injuries and his lineup was stacked. He could make no wrong choice. However, this year was a little different. It was a little different story. The injuries of Jose Altuve, Yordan Alvarez, Lance McCullers, Luis Garcia, and the absence of Justin Verlander for the majority of the season. Even Jose Abreu struggled at the beginning of the season. All of that overworked the bullpen and the young rotation, as well as challenged the offense and obviously Dusty as well. However, the most questionable decisions so far have been his reluctance to start Yainer Diaz and Chas McCormick. Dusty fell in love with Mauricio Dubon's performance in the first half of the season when Altuve was out. However, his power and defense does not compare to McCormick's, which doesn't justify starting Dubon over McCormick. And now, Martin Maldonado. Maldi led the league in years. Let this year in pass balls, the lowest percentage in the league in caught stealing, and who has number 2 in the entire league in pop time. Had only a couple of pass balls, and his caught stealing percentage was yet again at the top of the league. Yes, rookie Yainer Diaz. Adding to the offensive numbers, he ended the year with the most home runs by a rookie catcher in franchise history, with 23 home runs, and with 100 less at-bats than he should have had. He had a 60 RBI over 100 games, which is over a full 162 games is over in a 96 RBI season. He also ended the year with 128 OPS plus, behind a Hall of Famer like Busty Poser and a young phenomenon who led the Orioles to the ALDS this year, Adley Rutschman. Now we ask why we are starting a man with 128 batting average. I understand Maldi catching for ace Framber Valdez and veteran Justin Verlander. It became apparent through 3,500 career managerial games before the Astros. He had only led his team to 1 pennant, even with the Hall of Fame players, MVPs, ERA and strikeout leaders, silver sluggers, RBI and home run leaders on each team every year, like Barry Bonds, Adam Quinn, Sammy Sosa, Park Pryor, or Kerry Wood, just to name a few. I think the Astros will be in a better position if these things had been considered in the regular season. I mean, the Astros made it to the ALCS because of the Mariners lost. But honestly, the magic of Houston is mostly present in the recruitment, meaning there's so much talent in that dugout. If they want to obtain their third consecutive AL pennant, everybody must contribute, especially Dusty. With this game, every out counts. And right now, Maldonado is exactly that, an out. Houston will have Christian Javier on the mound, a pitcher with the 2.0 ERA in his career postseason games, a one-hit performance last year in the ALCS, and the no-hitter in the World Series last year with 9 Ks. So if there's anyone Houston wants on that mound for Game 7, it's going to be El Reptile. But it can be anyone's game with Max Scherzer, because he's also starting, and Texas offense has proven to be threatening.
You know what? I couldn't have said it any better myself. But let's go to the other side of this conflict now. So, Joe, this question is directed for you and the Rangers. I know you're the president of the Texas Rangers fan club. So, of course, the Rangers, who are 3 outs away from winning the crucial Game 5, I know that one hurt you, bro. But they remained alive in Game 6. How did they clinch the pennant in Houston? I know you've been talking about the theory that the road team is going to win every game. How did they make that dream become a reality?
Yeah, I've been thinking a lot about the 2019 World Series between the Nationals and Astros, where only the road teams won. Well, for Texas, Aram, I believe that it will come down to getting on the board early. That is how the Rangers have won their games this series, winning all 3 contests in H-Town. When you look at Texas's wins in Houston in games 1, 2, and 6, the lineup was able to get on the board in the first or second innings early. A run in the second inning of Game 1, 4 runs in the first inning of Game 2, and a run in the first inning of Game 6. This Rangers offense has been aggressive all season, but struggled when Christian Javier faced them in Arlington in Game 3. What a massive opportunity for this offense to right their wrongs against a stout playoff pitcher in this Game 7. However, Aram, I have to note, notice how Texas also kept the Astros at bay in their house during these wins in H-Town. These wins involved stellar pitching, which we didn't see at Globe Life Field. In Games 3, 4, and 5, the Texas pitching staff gave up a whopping 23 runs in Arlington. At Minute Maid Park, however, through 3 games in Houston, only 6 runs have been surrendered. If the Rangers win this ballgame, it is because they got in front of Houston early, while this pitching staff limits the Astros' production with runners in scoring position, which we've seen in all of Texas' ALCS wins.
I'll tell you what, Joe, I do hope your conspiracy theory comes true tonight. The game will be in an hour. It's going to be very exciting. We're all going to tune in. All right, so the last question is for both of you. The Houston Astros and the Texas Rangers have one of the tightest records in history, with Texas leading the all-time 136-135, including this current postseason. There have also been legends who have competed for both franchises, such as Nolan Ryan and Pudge Rodriguez. So, in your own words, why do you think this series is so big for baseball in our Lone Star State? Joe, let's start with you.
Yeah, I have to say it's simply because the MLB, a league that isn't known for its parity, is starting to see more success from the non-blue blood teams. Now with 12 playoff teams, gone are the days of seeing the Red Sox, the Yankees, Dodgers, or even Braves waltz into a title race without a fight, because there's more of an incentive to try in the regular season. A league championship that is completely in the South is certainly not the usual. But obviously, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention that this is the first time that the Rangers and Astros played in the playoffs. Historically, both teams have played in separate leagues until 2013, when it was announced that the Astros would join the AL West. But from that point on, a rivalry that was a rare interleague matchup turned into a fierce rivalry that has contained 13 to 19 games a season for the past decade, excluding, of course, the wacky 2020 COVID season. Couple that on with the fact that these franchises have usually not been good at the same time, case in point that the Rangers were good in the early 2010s and the Astros were historically awful in that period, while the roles would then flip in the later half of the decade. The Lone Star Series had no other choice but to go 7 games, and I'm glad that lifelong Texans like myself have had the pleasure of seeing baseball get more popular in this state, especially with an all-time series that is one for the books.
It is definitely going to be one for the books, and it's going to come to a conclusion tonight. Perla, what do you have to say about it?
Well, adding on to what Joe said, both of the Rangers and the Astros ended the regular season with a 90-win and 72-loss record, and now the same story stands, being tied 3-3 heading into the final game of the ALCS. In the regular season, the Astros came out on top by the matchup record on the last day of the season, so they will try to come out on top in Game 7 too. Minute Maid Park also has a memory of Mad Max winning the World Series on Game 7 with the Washington Nationals in 2019. So this is a chance for Houston to redeem themselves in a way, and it will be the 3rd consecutive time the Astros will have gone to the World Series. I believe that Houston is focused on solidifying the dynasty they have constructed after the 2017 season. It will also be the 3rd time overall for the Rangers to go to the World Series. And if they take it all the way, it will be their first time to win the World Series. Texas team is filled with underdogs like Evan Carter, a player who did not make it to the Baseball America's Top 500. I think we can all agree that he has been a huge asset for the Rangers if you even take a glance at his stats. All of that makes an exciting and important matchup because as viewership increases, so does the unclarity of which team will take Game 7.
Yeah, like you said, we don't know who's going to win, but whatever happens, I can say both you guys know ball. Thanks for that, Joe and Perla. When we return, Zach Davis will preview the NBA season, the best league in the world. You guys really don't want to miss it. We'll be right back.
College Pressbox. We've got Zach Davis in the studio to preview the NBA season. Zach, how are you?
I'm great. How are you, Deb?
I'm good. Thanks for asking. Now, as a hoops fan myself, give me a little preview about the upcoming season.
Well, Deb, the good news is that basketball season is back tonight with new faces and old faces and new jerseys. I cannot wait for opening night to be upon us. In the East Coast, all the hype is going to be gathered to the great city of Milwaukee. The Bucks, coming off a 58-win season and first place finish in the conference, they added superstar point guard Damian Lillard to help the organization get its 2nd title in 4 years. In their way is the Celtics of Boston, who nabbed former Bucks guard Jrue Holiday and the Lillard deal. The Celtics finished second in the Eastern Conference last year, and with the additions of Holiday and All-Star Kristaps Porzingis, the race for first in the East will be fascinating to watch throughout the season. After Boston, the competition falls off. Philadelphia, with reigning MVP Joel Embiid, are seeing locker room problems with James Harden, and their starting lineup is in the air for their opening game. The Miami Heat, who won the Eastern Conference playoffs last year and kept their roster together in the offseason, are going to struggle to compete at a high level once more in the regular season. However, nobody will want to see them come playoff time. One team that is coming in very under the radar is the Indiana Pacers. The Indiana Pacers. The year-long's rebuild is going to conclude as this team will elevate to more competitive ground. Led by Halliburton and Miles Turner, this team has a strong core with much depth. Don't be surprised if they have an impact on the league this season and make a run come April. Now heading over to the West Coast, the NBA schedule has blessed its fan base with the Nuggets-Lakers matchup on opening night. Two of the top teams in the West and arguably the NBA, the Nuggets and the Lakers, kept their core roster together over the offseason and added more depth. The Lakers, with I believe the deepest team LeBron's ever played on, look to take their revenge on Denver after being swept by the Nuggets in the Western Conference Final. The Suns look to return to a championship after losing to Milwaukee in 2021. Having one of the best power trios in the NBA with Bradley Beal, Kevin Durant, and Devin Booker, this team is going to score a lot of points. Defense lacks on this roster, but with that three-headed monster, the Suns are going to be a very fun team to watch. The Warriors only got stronger this offseason with the addition of veteran point guard Chris Paul. A very short but powerful starting five in CP3, Curry, Klay Thompson, Andrew Wiggins, and Draymond Green. The Warriors are going to be lethal and can hit you in all kinds of ways. Now, what's an NBA preview without mentioning 7'4" Victor Wembanyama? The Spurs have the opposite of the Warriors lineup in starting 6'8" Jeremy Sokan at point guard this season. This team is going to be tall and multi-dimensional. It will still be a couple of years before the Spurs are truly competing again, but every NBA fan should be looking forward to watching Pop and the Spurs play at a high level once more. As the season approaches, my excitement levels only grow. Expect Jokic to take another MVP, Wembanyama to be Rookie of the Year, Chet Holmgren to be Defensive Player of the Year, and Jordan Poole of Washington to be Most Improved. I predict the Nuggets will take down Milwaukee in the NBA Finals and that the Sixers will lose in the play-in game. The anticipation for the upcoming NBA season is palpable, with fans eagerly waiting to the return of their favorite teams and players. With new acquisitions and familiar faces in different jerseys, the league promises thrilling matchups and fierce competition. With these storylines and talented players, NBA fans worldwide should be in for a thrilling ride, and the season ahead is sure to be one for the history books.
You know, you just talking about the NBA makes me excited for the NBA season. Thank you so much for your analysis, Zach. When we come back, we have Samantha Perl and Kaitlyn Gomez coming on to break down the U.S. Grand Prix at Circus of Americas this past weekend. Yes, you heard that right. We'll be talking about Formula One. Soon, we'll be right back after this.
Welcome back into College Pressbox, and folks, we saved the best for last. We have our former sports director, Samantha Perl, and our station manager, Kaitlyn Gomez. Ladies, it's nice to see you. How are you all doing?
I'm peachy. I'm doing well. I'm looking forward to talking about Formula One. It's one of my favorite sports, so I'm ready.
Yeah, I'm like so stoked to be on and talk about my favorite sport and like the only sport that I can actually talk about.
All right, well, let's dive right into it. The U.S. Grand Prix occurred this weekend, and Samantha, can you describe what went down at the Circuit of the Americas?
Yes, so I will give an overview of what happened from Friday through Sunday, and then Kate will give specifics more from the race after me. So for the drivers, this is many of their favorite of the Grand Prix. The U.S. Grand Prix in Austin started in 2012 and has been the only race within the U.S. until 2022, when the Miami Grand Prix occurred for the first time and when the Las Vegas Grand Prix was added to the lineup this year, and that race will happen in November. Now, I'll first start with the results from Friday. I was able to attend the race to see practice and qualifying, which I had a blast and was an amazing experience. Starting off, the reigning world champion Max Verstappen, who drives for Red Bull, went off with a flying start. After pitting, he drove on hard tires and was able to go a second faster on the straight. on the track. This is pretty incredible since he already is quite fast and has the fastest car on the grid. The gap narrowed and Lewis Hamilton, who drives for Mercedes, was able to get close to Verstappen and at one point was faster than the Dutchman. But in the end, Verstappen happened to be faster because he only pitted 3 times versus Hamilton, who pitted 4 times. The more times a driver pits, the farther behind the driver will be, and if they can catch up to the position they had before going into the pit lane. But Charles Leclerc, who drives for Ferrari, was able to surpass both drivers, being the fastest and claiming pole position, earning him the top spot for Sunday's race. Leclerc was able to do this because his car had soft tires, and that was the best strategy Ferrari had going into qualifying. In the final sector, Lewis Hamilton was 0.3 of a second shorter than Max Verstappen. The final results for Friday were Leclerc at first, McLaren's Lando Norris at second, Lewis Hamilton at third, Ferrari's Carlos Sainz at fourth, Mercedes' George Russell at fifth, and Max Verstappen ended in sixth. Although Charles Leclerc received pole position on Friday, Max Verstappen won the sprint race on Saturday and therefore made the starting grid for Sunday's shift to Verstappen starting at first, Leclerc at second, Hamilton at third, Lando Norris at fourth, Oscar Piastri at fifth, and so on. For Saturday, this was the first ever sprint race at the Circuit of the Americas. For the sprint race, that was introduced in Formula One in 2021 and is essentially a shortened race for the drivers and was 19 laps compared to the usual 56 laps at COTA. Although Max qualified for 6th due to a track limit infringement during Friday's qualifying session, he was able to have the fastest lap with 1 minute 34 seconds and 0.534 milliseconds. The gap for Leclerc was 0.055 seconds, and as I mentioned, allowed him to place second at the starting grid. And Hamilton will start third on the grid with 0.069 seconds off of Verstappen, while Norris will start fourth with 0.042 seconds behind Hamilton. What I thought was notable was that George Russell took 7th place, but dropped to 8th behind Alpine's Pierre Gasly when he received a 5-second penalty for overtaking Oscar Piastri off the circuit. Now, it's time for a recap of race day, which was an exciting race for sure. The positions changed rapidly and was sure interesting to watch as a fan. To recap, the starting grid was in this order: Verstappen, Leclerc, Hamilton, Norris, Piastri, Sainz, Perez, Russell, Albon, and Gasly. By lap 12, Verstappen was up to third, while Lando Norris passed him and led on lap 28 of 56. Norris attempted to overtake him at turn 13, but was unsuccessful due to him going too wide. After Verstappen made his second pit stop, he was able to surpass Leclerc, regaining the lead. But Ferrari's strategy didn't go as planned because Leclerc started at second, he finished in 6th. The changing of the tire hardness was not effective enough. After the first round of pit stops for Mercedes, Hamilton was able to surpass Norris and Verstappen in lap 49. Midpoint during the race, Verstappen was struggling with brake issues, and to his engineers, he was not too pleased. The old switcheroo happened several times before the race ended, but Verstappen was able to finish in first, making this his 50th win ever, a historic milestone for sure. Max Verstappen becomes the second fastest driver to reach this milestone, and Michael Schumacher is the only driver to reach this milestone in fewer races. But after the race ended, Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc were disqualified due to a technical infringement. The final standings were Verstappen, Norris, Sainz. There's still a fight for the Constructors' Championship. Here are the final driver standings after the U.S. Grand Prix for the top 5. Verstappen has 466 points, Perez with 240 points, Hamilton with 201 points, Alonso with 183, and Sainz with 171 points.
And thank you for that, Samantha. Now let's switch gears to Kate. I know you all see what I did there. Now, Samantha mentioned that 2 of the drivers, Lewis Hamilton and Charles Leclerc, were disqualified. So, Kate, can you explain to us how and why this happened?
Yeah, it was a very unfortunate race weekend altogether for Charles Leclerc, with Ferrari's race strategy failing him yet again. To start from pole and end in 6th just for it to be taken away is devastating. And for Lewis, the 7-time world champion, is still reeling from 2 disappointing years and is slowly making his way back to the top. This random plank check was the worst thing that could happen to the 2. So usually after the race, the drivers get weighed and their cars get checked by a handful of individuals when under parc ferme. Now, parc ferme or closed park, is a time when no one is allowed to touch the cars but a selected few. At the end of the race, some cars can be randomly selected for more than just the usual checkups. Recently, we've seen fuel checks, but this weekend they checked the planks. So, if you've ever seen an F1 car spark, there is a part that's supposed to mitigate it. What was once a wooden plank, this plank at the bottom is now a resin piece. In parc ferme, a Mercedes and a Ferrari had their planks thickness tested. What may seem like a silly rule actually stems from serious safety concerns. Anything less than 9 millimeters is against FIA regulation. And now the FIA is the Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile and the governing body of F1. In Austin, there was both the sprint race and the actual race, so the wear of the planks can be credited to the amount of time spent on the bumpy track. That's about all the technical talk I'll get into, but I will say some fans have speculated foul play within the FIA boss's decisions. Like, could this have been targeted? Sure, they say it was just a random, but this seems like a bit fishy.
All right, guys, the finish line is in sight, and thank you for that prolonged analysis. It was excellent, and all I really got to say to y'all is I owe you an apology. I wasn't familiar with your sport, but when we return, we'll take a look at the past weekend in Longhorn sports. Stay with us. We'll be right back after this on College Pressbox.
Women's basketball, Taylor Jones has named to the watch list for the Lisa Leslie Award. Only 12 players are selected.
Texas football head coach Steve Sarkisian named to the Dodd Trophy midseason list. He has led the Longhorns to a 6-1 record as well as the number 7 spot in the AP polls in what has already been one of the best seasons the Longhorns have had in recent memory.
Women's golf legend Betsy Roll dies at age 95. She won more than 90 tournaments championships. This one includes 4 U.S. Opens.
Now let's look at this week in Longhorn sports. On Thursday, we got volleyball versus Baylor, 7 p.m. on FS1. Looking over to Friday, softball versus Texas State, 6 p.m. Volleyball versus Baylor at 7 p.m. Both of those will be on Longhorn Network. And on Saturday, football versus BYU at 2:30 p.m. That's going to be on ABC.
That'll do it for this week's episode of College Pressbox. Thank you for everyone for tuning in, and thank you to everyone in our back room, including our executive producer, Jason Conander. Do not forget to tune into our other shows this week, like College Crossfire on Wednesday at 9 p.m. and the 1 Sports on Friday at 10 a.m. That's it for me. I'm Debanny Cerda. He's Aram Vela for TSTV Sports. Have a great night.